Hello and welcome to the Glazier Nation podcast. My guest today is Adrian Lowenstein. Adrian joined us to accept his 2023 Content Creator of the Year award from Glazier Nation. Super fun, super interesting conversation with Adrian. We obviously discussed content creation and everything that goes into that, but we also talked about non-negotiables, taking care of yourself, trends in our industry, and how everybody can communicate better pre-con so we can avoid those pricing surprises down the road. I really had a blast chatting with Adrian, and I hope you enjoy. Hey, just FYI, I'm very sorry. The video version of me on the podcast is really poor quality. Not sure how that happened. We'll fix it going forward. The audio and Adrian's video, perfectly fine. And of course, the Glazier Nation podcast is brought to you by Glazier Nation. Go to glaziernation.com to check out all their offerings. Boston yesterday, New York today, Nashville tomorrow.
That's correct.
Did I get that right?
Yes.
That's a lot of traveling, man. That's more traveling than I want to do.
Well, I haven't picked up all the traveling tips, but I've been asking a lot of pros around the industry how to get better.
There you go. That's good.
Packing is my biggest weakness right now.
Packing, just the whole airport experience. I used to travel a ton when I was young. I would do like backpacking and all that kind of stuff, but now it just terrifies me.
And the one thing I don't have TSA pre, and everybody tells me that I'm out of my mind, but I'm just too lazy to go to Dwayne Reed or whoever you can go to just sign it up. So
I just signed up for this because the last time I was in the Atlanta airport, I got lucky and I got like snuck to the front of the line by some nice lady, but everybody else was waiting in this 3-hour line. So after that, I'm like, okay, I got to get the thing. And I got mine at Staples.
Yeah, something simple like that. Does it make that big of a difference?
So
it gives you ease of mind instead of walking up and seeing the 50-minute line and you're like, I'm missing the flight. It's over.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a 40-year-old dad, so like I'll get there super early no matter what. But like just knowing that I can get there in the normal time frame and hopefully get through. Let's hop back to traveling. First of all, congratulations. You have won the 2023 Glazier Nation Award for Content Creator of the Year.
Very cool. Now we got to put in some GPT applause.
I can definitely. I need a soundboard. You're right. I'm gonna get a soundboard. But yeah, man. Is that something? 5-10 years ago, whatever it is, if you would have looked into the future, did you see yourself getting a Content Creator Award?
No, I was never a big social media person. And the funny thing is we were talking about working out earlier, consistency and just having a routine and creating content has sort of become that for me. I like to create a lot of it on the weekends when I have downtime or when things are sporadic, and being able to post every morning. It's like if I weren't to do that, something feels off. And if a morning comes and I don't have a post, I'm kind of scrambling and shut off everything that I'm doing. Even if I don't love the piece of content, it's just the rhythm and routine of constantly getting something out of there. It's just like exercising a muscle.
Yeah, I have a garage gym and I have some stuff that I write on the walls out there as like motivation. And a big one for me was discipline, persistence, and patience. And like maybe it makes a lot more sense to your workout regimen or your diet, but you can apply it to anything you do. And you're right. It's just staying consistent with it if you want to do it, right? So why did you get into content creation?
Well, yeah, I think it's what I thought of when you said that is thinking about what the underlying motive is. And I think everybody starts for a different reason. And I think a lot of it in the beginning is experimentation, and you have to just throw a lot out there and see what sticks. And it's more so finding the balance between what sticks for others, what others enjoy versus what you actually enjoy producing.
For sure.
Because if you just produce content that you knew would do well, but it wasn't fulfilling for you, it wouldn't be sustainable. And then vice versa, if you didn't get that feedback loop or validation that it was good content, you probably wouldn't keep going. So I feel like you need this fine balance of both. I think it's become almost like a creative outlet for me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'll be doing this exact thing in 4 or 5 years or 9 or 10 years, but I feel like having some form of a creative outlet, I always want to have that component in my life. And the beautiful thing is encouraging others to do it. And when you see other people slowly blossoming and they're in those initial stages, putting things up, and you can see they're reluctant and they'll text you, what do you think of this? How's the verbiage? Did I sound like an idiot? Should I change this? And you're like, you just got to put it out there and go for it. And when you realize that everybody's so preoccupied and not actually scrutinizing it to the level that you're scrutinizing it, it takes a while to get over that. But once you are over that, it becomes second nature. I mean, at this point, you even question what you put up, or it's just like clockwork.
So I'm doing some stuff that's still new to me. The stuff where I guess the similarity with what you do is you're talking into the phone by yourself, right? So that's still a little new to me, and I'm still working on dialing that in. But I've definitely gotten over the hump of caring, like, oh, I gotta retake that. My shirt was wrinkled. It's like, no one in the world is ever going to see that. So my wife, like, she's wanted to get into some things, and she's pretty passionate about like homeschooling, probably number one. And then number two, my boys actually started a little Play-Doh business. And we did like a young entrepreneurs fair where they had a booth and they sold their Play-Doh kits and they had to buy their own ingredients. And like, I would say half of the people that visited our booth asked us, like, are you on Instagram? Do you have a website? And they don't. And my wife wants to get into that, and she wants to make, like, you know, reels of them making the Play-Doh and that kind of stuff. But she goes through exactly what we're kind of talking about. So I can relate, where everything's got to be perfect. And it's like, no, it doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. It just has to be done. What made you start doing the content? I guess let me broaden that a little. So you are in our industry as define what you do for Skyline Windows, I guess.
So my background, I started out as a facade consultant. So I come from the technical side of the industry. And then I went more into, now I'm on the manufacturer contracting side. So now I'm more on business development, marketing, sales, but there's still a lot of interface with the technical folks. And I think now I'm remembering where it all stemmed from. I think what bothered me the most is that there's this huge stigma with engineers and technical folks that they aren't effective communicators, and that they're not able to effectively communicate with the developers, general contractors. There's just divide between the design team and the construction team. And there are those that are able to intertwine, but being able to effectively communicate technical concepts, and I don't really get that deep into a lot of them. A lot of them is just trying to spark conversations and letting the real technical folks shine. So it was trying to create an environment where some of those folks could gain a platform and share and spread some of that knowledge, because I think there's so much of that hidden knowledge. And I've met some of the old time, guys that came around to first start the unitized curtain wall systems and initial rain screen systems. And all of that has almost become like tribal knowledge that's hidden in textbooks and hidden in notes and share files at certain firms. But if you're just a young person in the industry trying to learn, there's really limited resources as to be able to grasp a lot of it. And it can be really, I don't want to say discouraging, but demotivating, feeling like you don't, I don't want to say you're not good enough, feeling like you don't have the technical wherewithal to confidently speak on your craft. And I think behind the closed doors, you want to do a lot of that learning after school, but it's hard to dissect and really select where you should put your time and effort. So, I mean, maybe it was just a first step to really try to get a lot of what we do out there. And like we were talking about the other night, in a fun way, in an entertaining, engaging way that can make it digestible for younger folks coming into the industry, either wondering which direction they should go or what they should study. Because at that age, you just don't know. It's just whoever you're drawn or attracted to, you just cling on it like a sponge.
So did you start creating content with you were with Skyline Windows?
Yeah.
And did you have any idea what you were doing when you started? or did you just kind
In
of?
terms of being a, I don't know, a creator, or in terms of
Yeah, I mean,
content, or just in terms of like the technical information?
I guess was the mindset just I'm going to film some information and share it, or was it I'm going to make this a thing and
Like
become
100% just throw some stuff out there and see what people think. I had no idea what it could or would become.
when was kind of the trigger point where you realized you were kind of onto something that people were into?
I started this series called Demystifying Facades. And so once a week, I would just put up, I don't know, what are the dangers of using a room side low-E coating, or what's the difference between a sliding and compression style window, just different window topics or glazing topics. And Max Perlstein caught on to it and really kind of helped elevate me in encouraging me on how to communicate that at a broader scale. So I think that series got some traction, and then I just kept going from there. But again, a lot of it is not, to be totally honest, all I have planned in my head is create 5 pieces of content a week and see what happens. I mean, I don't even know what I'm creating later this week. A lot of it's become going to different cities, meet with different clients, and just document what I'm learning or experiencing. Sure. So that has also taken some of the pressure off of it, because I think initially the other thing is you get in this pattern of creating, and all of a sudden you put a lot of pressure on yourself to constantly improve and come out with better content, try to innovate and constantly one up yourself. And that can also be demotivating and very discouraging. So I think when you try to take the pressure off it and just lean into the creative aspect of it and remember why you got into it in the first place, it eases some of that anxiety, and has at least helped thus far, but definitely something I'm working on.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, if you have scripted content, that's fine, but I think anyone that wanted to participate, if they were doing something interesting that others could either learn from or be entertained by, I mean, you really just have to turn the camera on.
And the truth is, I think when you're in this industry, you assume everybody else around you knows what you know. And I think sometimes you have to remove that script a little bit and just remember, like, even how's an insulated glass unit constructed? What is it made of? And you go around to 99% of people, they have no idea. So just to be able to explain those basics, and you have no idea who it's getting to.
Yeah.
It's so yeah, it's a little bit of imposter syndrome at times, and you have to really remember that 5-10 years ago, how much you know now versus then is just night and day.
And sometimes too, you know, if you want to be specific about our industry, people might already know it, but like, if you and I met at a social event, when we started talking, we would like talk shop, and we would talk about projects, and we would talk about products, and you might already know what I'm saying, but you would still find it interesting because it's what you work with.
Sure.
So that type of content can just be entertaining for someone that kind of is just intrigued by our industry, right?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too is traveling a lot and having conversations with different people in different cities, especially when our industry is so driven by not only labor rates, but also climate zones.
Sure.
So what's normal in Florida can be night and day to Seattle versus New York versus with seismic issues on the West Coast, or, hurricane impact glazing, just all these different topics that some people might not be exposed to at all.
Yeah, I moved to Florida from Colorado, and the first hotel I stayed in while I was interviewing, I'm sitting in the lobby eating breakfast, and I just was like amazed that there was monolithic glass in the storefront, and I'm just like, I didn't know people were still doing that. So
it did register. I remember you made the video on the windows sweating, and then I stayed at that hotel in Lake Nona, and the whole thing was pouring, and I'm like, this is just the norm.
Right. That's kind of what we have here, but one more thing I wanted to mention that you said, you know, younger people in the industry, that's kind of, and the podcast I did with Keith Dobman, we talked about how your content creation can kind of evolve, and not just your content creation. I mean, people evolve, your job at work evolves, your relationship with your family evolves, but that's something that's kind of become important to me doing this stuff is you mentioned the younger people and the tribal knowledge, and sometimes just, I'm a second generation glass guy, so I've been doing it for a very long time, even though I'm relatively still young. Sometimes I just think like someone hopping into this industry from nowhere, maybe they came from a different background and they hop in at age 25, 26, 27. I can't imagine like how many times they're faced with those questions that they just don't know the answer. And they'll learn and they'll have people behind them, their engineering team, whatever it is. But another outlet where this type of information can be entertaining, I think can only help our industry as a whole. So I like that. That's important to me. You are only on LinkedIn, is that correct?
For right now, even though you're talking to me about YouTube Shorts.
Yeah.
In the back of my mind.
so can we see you branching out to YouTube Shorts soon?
Potentially. And I'll say, the one thing that two things that scare me about the platform, I'll say LinkedIn, and I don't know how this is going to extrapolate onto other platforms, but ChatGPT and just AI software, I feel like people are using that as an excuse now to make creating content easy. Write me a post about, I don't know, whatever. Yeah. And then it'll spit out a post for you and they think, oh, easy, no problem, I can start. And so at what point, does the content become diluted or the news feed become diluted? It becomes completely oversaturated because all of a sudden everyone thinks now they could be a creator. And then the people just deter to a different platform. And so I don't know what the implications are for the future of content creation in general. But I hope that it doesn't dilute the creative aspect of it, because I remember, when I really started 3 years ago or so, I would spend hours and hours and hours researching and trying to perfectly craft. And I've gotten better now that I'm not as so critical and hard on myself, but I feel like you have to go through that process initially to really understand how to exercise that muscle and really squeeze to that pain point where you're trying to irk out and every idea or thought that you can spit out on the paper.
Yeah. I hear you. I think.
And maybe I'm just one of those guys that was like, back in my day.
No. Cause I'm aware of how powerful those tools are. And I'm aware that we're kind of just at the precipice of those tools, right? Like the next version and then the version after that and then the version after that, right? And I know how you can even mix that stuff with like the AI generated models, and you can do short form video without your face or your voice. I mean, you can use Joe Biden's voice, you can use Mickey Mouse's voice, and you can write a content piece about the thermal properties of insulating windows, right? But I think, and I'm kind of, I might be a little tinfoily hat on this stuff, but I think there's a golden era age where we use these tools, but there's still the human element, right? And I think you'll see the difference between a piece that is entirely human generated, a piece that maybe they used AI for some suggestions, and then a piece that is entirely done by AI. And you'll filter out the third, I feel like. At least for the time being.
It's all about authenticity. And I think what you do with creating video, well, I was about to say you can't fake that. I guess maybe we're going to get to the point where one day you can.
Yeah.
The deep fakes. But, that's the rawest, most true form of content possible, because you're not hiding behind a wall. It's just you in front of that camera.
Yes.
So I like the fact that it's encouraging more people to put themselves out there, but I don't want it to be an excuse to lack creativity. And who knows, maybe people will shy away from it and get tired of it. I just think it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. I don't think it's a good or bad thing. I'm just more so curious to see how it evolves over time.
Yeah. I mean, I've dabbled with it, right? Like, here's an example. My kids and I made a board game yesterday. We made a whole board game with pieces and cards and rules. And I couldn't quite figure out how to make the rules. Like, we needed a formula basically for rolling dice of like what would happen. And I went to ChatGPT and I typed in the dice that we have. Hey, we have these dice. This is a game for small kids. what formula should I use? And dude, it gave me a formula that worked perfectly in like 3 seconds.
Wow.
So it just
tapped into how it can be utilized.
Yeah. And I've commented this before, I think, is I don't think AI replaces us. I think humans that use AI replace humans that don't use AI. So I think what you're saying, where more people will get involved, there might be people that use a little cheat tool to accelerate past some people, but the authenticity that you said, and going back to like, if you're making content that you don't enjoy, it's going to show through. So if you're making content that is completely AI generated, I feel like it's going to show through.
Yeah, and the question becomes, you start with written or verbal, and then you go to, video, and it's very uncomfortable putting yourself out there at first. And then you start exercising that muscle and get better, and now you don't even think about it. You put the camera on and you record something for 2 minutes. And you might critique yourself and do a second or third take, but you'll get over it.
Yeah.
Once you become comfortable with that, how do you continue to push that boundary and get out of your comfort zone and take that next leap or that next bound? And I think it's very easy to get into this reinforced feedback loop where you're like, all right, I'm great at it, just keep going. But it's like constantly finding new ways to test yourself.
Yeah. And it also has to be stuff that you're still interested in.
Of course, but isn't part of the interest experimentation and failing and getting better over time?
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
You love looking back at yourself 3 years ago, 5 years ago, and being like, this is just a completely different person. Look how far I progressed.
You can look, it's super interesting too, to look at like people that have like blown up. There's this one guy that my family likes on TikTok. It's Good Boy Noah. And he does cooking recipes with a puppet, and he sings, and then the puppet sings. It's like these cute, funny videos, but like you scroll back all the way to the beginning of his account and you see the first videos that he made, and they're awful, right? And everybody kind of starts out that way. And then he wasn't even doing the puppet thing. He was doing like painting, right? And then I guess, through experimentation, he ended up in this place, and he makes content that it looks like he enjoys and we enjoy. So that's kind of what we're trying to get at. But you're the content creator of the year. So only LinkedIn. We're a little skeptical about LinkedIn. We're looking at YouTube Shorts, but we're not on Instagram. We're not on TikTok. Have you tried?
Part of it, and correct me if I'm wrong here, as I'm thinking through this, I was going to say the people that I want to connect with and communicate with likely aren't on TikTok. And that might not be the case, because again, if you're trying to communicate with a younger audience, perhaps that's what they're engaging on.
Yeah, that's kind of the question, right? It's like your content is probably more applicable to the LinkedIn crowd, but you've got a 22-year-old engineer, doesn't quite know what he's looking for. He's scrolling through TikTok and he finds some of your stuff. He might latch on.
100%. I mean, and I'm constantly asking, because now I'm at the point where I get to talk to new candidates and try to recruit people out of college and young engineers. And I'm always asking myself, what would excite me if I were in their shoes? Why would I want to come work for them? Why would I want to enter this industry? And I think, do you have a technical background?
No, I have a completely glass installer background.
So you learned it by trade.
Yes.
So I guess I learned it by textbook. So I went to engineering school, and I didn't enjoy it. I felt like I had to do it if I wanted to have job security. Now I enjoy it, but it's because I can feel and see the product, and everything I learned from statics to dynamics to just basic physics concepts now come up every day in the calcs we provide, deflection criteria that we run, anything. So it's like if I could see the real world application when I was a student and just have that call it intimacy with the concepts I was learning, I feel like I would have been that much more engaged. And I always ask myself, if you were actually engaged, would you have gotten more out of school, or would you have gone in a different path? And we are where we are today, but getting out of the model, and I wonder how you think about this with your children, of just learning an equation or memorizing something just to memorize it, and how do you actually grasp it?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, listen, man, my kids are homeschooled, so we're very anti memorization, test patterns. We're very pro do stuff. I mean, I just told you the example where my children have started a business. They're 7 and 5. So being able to do real world applications. What you said super interesting though, because you know, that young engineer, future professional, if they see the content that you could connect those real world examples to the formulas they're learning, or, maybe more my background, someone that is 17, 18 years old and they're installing glass and maybe they don't have a lot of direction, if they can maybe see that the future potential, whether it is owning their own glass shop or becoming a foreman or I ended up becoming an outside sales rep. There's other things that you can do in the industry that's hard to see while you're kind of in that textbook or on that job site.
Even learning the concepts, and I think, I've spent a lot of time in doing like quality control inspections in unitized curtain wall factories or steel shops, or watched installers on site. And a lot of times it's a lot of rinse and repeat of the same task, but they don't understand the implications of what it is that they're doing. Meaning like properly cleaning the substrate before you apply sealant, understanding how adhesion works, that the physical chemical properties of sealant, how the materials are going to behave together. I feel like if they were to take an interest in the technical concepts, it would make them want to perform their job that much better.
Yeah.
So I always thought about that in factories or on site for accountability. If they understand why they're doing what they're doing,
Yeah.
and why it's so important for them to hone in on or perfect their craft, I just feel like you would get can't imagine you get a bad outcome out of that, but I also just feel like you'd get people more engaged in what it is that they were doing.
Yeah. And, I would love to see more people, let's say maybe they're estimators or project managers or account managers, whatever. I would love to see them touch the material more often, whether it's a mock-up, whether they're attending a test, something. And I find that maybe they don't do it because we're always so busy and we always have to get this done and this done. But like, man, if my estimators installed a couple storefronts or a couple windows, just, I don't know, twice a year, I feel like it would help them identify a lot of things during the bidding process that could save us all some gray hairs later. So completely agree.
And I think it's how it's all being received as well. I mean, think about it. You can hear the same thing from two different people, but if it's communicated a certain way to you or it resonates with you. And so I've also spent a lot of time thinking about that, not only business and sales, but also if you're a potential candidate looking for an employment opportunity, you can be a 21, 22-year-old and you're so excited being a young engineer. I got my first job offer. I have to take it. I don't even care what I'm doing. And you jump right into it. You're not selective at all. You don't have any leverage. But the truth is, if you're willing to learn, you're adaptive, you're hardworking, you have certain skills, the right employer will find you and you will attract the right situation. And I think it's thinking in more of an abundance mindset, in that if you just really focus on what's important to you, what type of people do you want to surround yourself with, and just stop trying to force situations with those that you're not resonating with. Stop trying to sell to the client that doesn't want to buy from you. Stop trying to get a job with the employer that doesn't want you. Stop trying to, poach the employee that wants something to do with you.
Yeah.
Just putting yourself out there, just like the creative aspect of it, who you are and what you stand for and what's important to you, and you'll attract the right people.
Yeah. I think that's going back to authenticity too. I mean, that's in this world of creating these social profiles for ourselves. I think people can get caught up in not being authentic. And I think when you start to show your true self, Andrew Herring is a great example of this. He is who he is, and people like that, and it resonates. And I've tried to take some of that into my game a little bit more too, you know.
Because nobody can do better at being you than you.
Yeah, and like you said, the customer that doesn't want to buy from you, you know, I can stop driving to that shop every month. You know, that's 4 hours a month I can pick up to do something else.
You could spend that time with your kids, or you can spend that time with a client that does want to buy from you.
Exactly.
And so all that time you're wasting, you can be spending talking to other people.
Exactly.
So I think it's it's the same thing if you think about it in relationships and dating. I mean, stop trying to go after the girl that wants nothing to do with you. Just open your eyes. There's the other one right there that's been waiting for you all along.
So that's a good segue. You are a traveling single man traveling through the world. Me as a 40-year-old father, how frequently are you traveling so I can live a little vicariously through you here?
Right now, too much. Right now, too much. I'm on about 4 airplanes a week.
4 airplanes a week.
Yes, but we're going to cut it down a little bit because I'd like to resume going back to having a normal life.
Okay.
But I enjoy it for right now. And the truth is, I never enjoyed traveling. I always liked routine and consistency. And part of taking on this type of role was getting out of my comfort zone again.
Sure.
And I've learned to adapt. And the funny thing is now that if I go a week without traveling, I feel a little antsy, or I feel like something's wrong. So it's just funny how, like a chameleon, you adapt to your environment.
So, okay, as a person who likes routine and consistency, how are you applying that when you're on 4 airplanes a week? How are you getting in your diet, your fitness, your content? How does that schedule work, or is it just pure chaos?
Not chaos. I think you have to. It's worked for me, and I think everybody should selfishly prioritize what it is that you want to do every day, whether putting up one piece of content, getting that 45-minute workout in the morning, and having your non-negotiables, essentially spending the first hour of the day with your kids, being able to pick them up from school, being able to cook with your wife at home at night, whatever that is, being able to say no to other things. And I think many people get stuck in the trap of just waking up, going about their day, and whatever hits them, and they just kind of flow like a river. But if you have boundaries and you set those precedents, and things are going to come up. I mean, I got stuck on the runway today from Boston, and I didn't know if I was going to make the podcast. And life is going to happen. But I think it's first and foremost, if you want to show up for your family, for your clients, and for the rest of the world, you have to take care of yourself first. I always believe that. And I think people, especially with their company and wanting to deliver for others and wanting to be the best husband and father for you, I've seen people let that aspect go, thinking, okay, but I'm giving for others, and selfishly, I don't want to take that time for myself. But if you're just going to be resentful, or you're not showing up and you're not present, then I don't know how sustainable, or if that's really the type of person you want to be.
Yeah, I think I like that non-negotiables. If I don't get my workouts in, I get grumpy, right? And that probably is reflected to my clients and my family. So being able to prioritize that helps you succeed in other areas. So maybe other people that are out there traveling all the time, what's a tip or trick to make sure you get those in?
One thing that I still struggle with is I'm around people often that enjoy having 1, 2, or 3 or more drinks at night during the week.
Sure.
And I think that has been something that I've had to learn to say no to, because I'm thinking about how I'm going to show up the next day or the next morning. And I've learned the hard way that you have to learn to be uncomfortable and learn to say no. And if you're around customers or people that don't want to spend time with you or don't want to do business with you because you're not willing to go out and spend the night out with them on a Tuesday night, then it's probably not somebody that you want to be with. So being able to accept that you can't just be a chameleon to everybody and let everybody else around you dictate your life. There are times that you're going to have to say no.
So you we can prioritize our non-negotiables, but it's almost like we also have to make a sacrifice somewhere else, right?
Absolutely.
And what you just described was an easy cut for me. I guess I'm going on about 4 months now. I cut the alcohol completely just because it got to the point where if I had 2 drinks on a Friday night, man, I was in a bad mood on Saturday. And I don't know if that's a thing with age or
Saturday, you were probably in a bad mood till Monday.
yeah, it just got to the point that it wasn't worth it, and I was wasting time, and I'm trying to do more with that time than just lay around feeling grumpy. So I like that. I like making that sacrifice, being able to say no. So all this traveling around you're doing, right? You're creating content, you're working with contractors, you're working with building owners, you're working with engineers. You're probably working with, what, 500 different people a month?
No, no, I'm pretty, I don't have that type of bandwidth. So pretty select about who, and trying to find the people, again, that I resonate the most with and trying to spend as much time with them.
Okay.
As possible.
So 500 might have been a bit of an exaggeration.
A little stretch.
You're working with a lot of industry people.
Yeah.
And you're working with them on a national basis. You know, we already kind of talked about how things are different from New York to Colorado to Florida. So what do you see in our industry? What major trends do you see among those people?
So I was in Boston this morning talking to a lab science developer about a gut rehab, repositioning on an old warehouse building that they have. And so it's going to be a historic replica window. And the consultant said, I don't know how we're going to get around this project without doing triple glazing. They explained all the challenges in that type of window configuration with triple glazing. And the energy codes are really becoming, I don't want to say challenging. Everybody knows that. We're really stretching the limits with our current technology called commercial grade aluminum windows, double glazed IGUs in cities like New York, Boston, and Seattle. I think we're really reaching a precipice where everybody is kind of turning to each other and saying, how are we going to do this? We can't build buildings anymore taking the prescriptive route. We have to take the performance route and do an energy model and make sure that we're falling within the envelope backstop. So it's interesting that I've had conversations like that in Boston and Seattle. And then I'll go to Texas and talk about a job and they'll say, you don't need a general contractor's license to build here. And so it's, I mean, you laugh, but like there's such a disparity in certain means of building and building practices in the country. And I think some of the things that we're working towards as a nation, it would shock you what disparity you see in having these discussions from climate zone to climate zone.
Yeah, and I'm not laughing at the non-requirement. I'm laughing at that disparity of how different it is. I mean, it's the same thing with the national government. I mean, I just think that that's such an impossible task to manage a country the size of ours, the size and scale, with all the states being so different, right? If you think about,
of course,
if you think about how different England is from France, but how close they are, right? But they're still 2 different countries with 2 different governments. And then you try to think about how different is California from Florida, but we're still under the same national government. Then to bring that back to your point about our industry, what do you see as a resolution of how to get there? Is it more local codes, or are we all going to adhere to one national code?
Local codes, because I think, I think you're going to have your local governments and cities and drivers of what is dictating certain building practices. I mean, it's, and I didn't mean to diminish Texas in that sense. I think part of it also is just education. I mean, I've been in Atlanta recently, and I think you still see a lot of stick-built glazing systems in mid to high-rise applications, where you go somewhere else and they would say, I can't imagine you wouldn't use a unitized system. And part of it is driven by labor costs. Part of it is just a little bit of a, this is how we do things here mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people change and trends change. I mean, you get certain people representing certain companies or means of building construction, and cities evolve. And so I think, it might be like steering the Titanic, and it might be a long haul process, and you get that first job and then you build momentum. But changing the means of building construction in a major market is quite a task. And I think some cities are more advanced than others, but I just think there's a ripple effect, and it just starts to bleed down from one to the other. I mean, there was a point probably in Florida where they would laugh at using insulated glass. Now it's becoming more common on high-end commercial projects. So, I think we're headed in the right direction ultimately.
Yeah. And we've moved. Somehow people are still using monolithic glass in some places, which I don't quite understand. I'm not a mechanical engineer, but the Florida building code has pretty much dictated that you're moving to insulating glass. But you can see that energy code and how it's, you've got the different climate zones throughout the country. Along those lines with the climate zones and energy, you were on a panel at BEC, and you guys were talking about high performance glazing. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what do you see? I guess we've kind of covered some climate zones and some markets. It's becoming challenging to build a building with glass, right? So what do you kind of see as product resolutions or answers to that problem?
So to the energy code problem with triple glazing, I think being able to use double glazed insulated glass units with a room side low E coating to meet the energy code to get similar performance to a triple glaze unit, but in a lighter weight configuration, is certainly going to help. It's going to allow you to still use the same systems, not run into structural issues, and then eliminate that embodied carbon concern with the additional light of glass. So you definitely, I think, will see more of those room side low E applications. Bird-friendly glazing, which I think is being implemented in more and more cities. That is one that I think we're going to need to find more aesthetically pleasing, economical options, because they can be quite costly, the ones that actually look decent. VIG is still very interesting to everybody. I think it's not in its infancy as a concept, but it's in its infancy as when it comes to availability for the industry. So a lot of people are excited about that. And, I think it's part of it, though, is it becomes challenging because you get these new laws like bird-friendly glazing or, strict energy envelope backstops. And everybody kind of looks at each other like, what are we going to do to meet code? And in a time like this where projects are so stressed and challenged from an economic standpoint, you have to ask yourself, well, if the owner has to spend a certain amount to make his facade meet code, is he going to compensate for that elsewhere? And so is the building being negatively impacted? And so asking yourself, are these code changes impacting us positively? And it's a hard question to answer because we don't really know what's going to come out of all of it.
So yeah, along those lines, the building owner, right, whether they're compensating or whether it gets to a point where they decide they don't want to build the building, right? That's the hardest part, right?
Yeah, and the other thing I'll say that can I curse on here or no?
Absolutely, cuss away.
All right, this is completely ass backwards. So I've been noticing that
I was expecting a harder cuss word.
Yeah, no, I can get harder. So one thing that I can't seem to figure out is I notice a lot of, designers will design a building, design a facade, SDs or DDs will come out, and then a few system providers will price it, and then everyone will get sticker shock and kind of run in circles and say, okay, what changes do we need to make to cut the price back? I don't know if designers are drawing systems or configurations or layouts with cost in mind. I think they're thinking about how much glazing area do I want? What do I want the profiles to look like? What do I want the brick returns to look like? And then they're just saying, okay, let's see what it costs, rather than getting that upfront feedback and learning what those cost parameters are. Stick within this sizing, stick within this coursing or this material. So you don't get all those surprises at the end. So it's something I'm noticing a lot of, like, before waiting till we get to the point where the local city has approved a certain design and then we have to go back to the city and get modifications made. Understand what parameters you're working within, design the system accordingly with the price in mind, and then we can all like expect that transparency throughout the process.
Yeah. So there's a bit of a common theme on this podcast about that and about communication early on. And as a manufacturer sales rep, I can tell you the designers that I work with, they'll ask here and there, is that a price ad or is that much more expensive? But I don't think they're going in with this curtain wall has to be at this dollar amount. What can I get for that dollar amount? It's more, probably the most frequently asked question I have right now is about extended face caps. Like that must just, maybe it's a local trend in Florida, I don't know, but bigger face caps, shaped face caps. And that's not a huge thing to blow up your budget, but it costs money. It's more metal. More metal equals more money.
Sure. So what do you think the limiting factor or the disconnect is? Is it that designers may have had poor experiences relying on contractors or manufacturers for honest feedback, so they've just been taught to sort of design in a bit of a silo, or do you think, I was going to say the manufacturers, contractors aren't doing an effective job
it could
getting through to resonating with the design community?
It could be both. I mean, if I'm a designer, right, you got to think about how many spec sections there are, and every spec section has how many representatives that may want to get that architect's ears, right? And of those representatives, how many of them are truly looking to be a trusted advisor with the best interest of the product, and how many are looking to, oh, you want extended face caps? Well, let me tell you something. I've got 36-inch. Yeah. I've got the biggest ones in the industry, my friend. So I definitely think that the designer probably wants to turn that off to a degree. Also, the contractors and manufacturers, I think a little bit of it goes back to what we were saying, where it would be good for people to touch the product. I think everybody is just busy, and you try to educate someone, you try to price something, but then you end up in this scenario where your 2-page bid is now a 16-page bid of options, and you could lose the job, and you don't want to put that much time into it. I think, and you tell me maybe if you see a better resolution, I think the resolution lays through technology. And I don't know if you've seen any of my stuff talking about smart documents, but I don't understand how we can't have documents exist that have pricing loaded into them. So when the designer pulls the details off of the manufacturer's website, maybe there's some disclaimer that the pricing is an approximate or an estimate. But when they build their curtain wall in Revit using the manufacturer's smart details, I don't see why we can't have some level of real-time pricing.
It's just building your own car online. It's the same idea. I mean, it should be that simple.
Yeah.
And I think there are people and major companies that are working towards having that type of software available, and I think it can be incredibly helpful. Unfortunately, that's not available to everybody. But if only we can get to the stage where, because I think what a technology like that would do is it would teach or set a certain expectation. You design within a budget parameter.
Yeah.
And so that became the norm all of a sudden. Okay, if we don't have that readily available, reach out. But it would be like a paradigm shift in that we're not just designing in a vacuum or in a silo. we actually have budget at the front of mind. So there's no surprises from owner to architect to subcontractor, etc.
Yeah. And, you said, reach out if it doesn't work. You can, there's still a role for the manufacturer and the contractor, the salesperson, where they've laid out a design and it's past their budget and they kind of don't know what to do with it. That's a great time to call the rep. And at that point, you could probably work in those documents together through a Teams meeting or something and say, hey, Mr. Architect, if we move this here, and we reduce these sizes and we reduce this, your design's pretty close, but we're saving 20%. There's a lot of room there, but
you need that human element.
The humans, a lot of my content is about AI and stuff, and like people I think get scared of that, but I do not think AI replaces humans, at least for a very long time. I think the self-checkout definitely replaced some humans at Target. But like you said, dude, we're stick building high rises in some cases, and that's not, you may not view a unitized system as technology, but it is a level of technology, and our industry is so slow to adapt to technology that what we're talking about may, I'd love to see it next year, but it may be more like a 10-year item where architects can work with that level of detail.
Yeah, of course. But if you think about where we were 10 years ago, it seems pretty feasible.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're landing self-driving spaceships on boats, stuff like that. So you would think we could have real-time documents for our architects.
Yeah. I hope so, at least. Otherwise, we might discourage those kids from entering this industry.
Yeah. Or Elon Musk takes over the fenestration industry with his new designs, and we're all just out of a job like the old Twitter employees.
Yeah, I'm out.
All right. The consistency and through the gym, right? So how do you maintain your gym routines while you're on the road? Are you using hotel gyms?
Was in a hotel gym this morning in Boston on the Charles River, and I'm in a bad mood, and I'm looking outside and there are people running and rowing on the Charles River. I mean, Boston's known for having some of the most talented rowers in the country. And that was just like, suck it up, get to your workout. And I think it's all about perspective. I used to want to have fun with it, go find a nice gym, and now it's like I have the time to work out. I have a nice hotel gym. But again, setting some of those parameters, and there's tricks you learn along the way. I mean, you find your hotels you like with a gym and have nice food options. And I think it's the 80-20 principle. 20% of the time, you're going to have to go out to this meal, or you're going to be drinking, you're going to do this. But 80% of the time, if you could just hone in on your consistency, especially when traveling, when there's so many unknowns and you're in I was about to say a foreign city, unknown city, you don't know what's going to be available, trying to set as many parameters as possible so you can elicit some of that consistency. At least allows you to stay on track when you're on the road, and then you could start to progress when you're back home. But you have to set expectations. You're not going to make a tremendous amount of progress, but I think everything in life really is consistency.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more on that. Like I told you before, I get grumpy if I miss too many workouts. If I was at your level of traveling, I would plan very specifically to make sure there was either a gym nearby that I had a membership to, right? Like there's some national chains, or like the hotel has to have a good gym, or where we're going to eat. Because I think there's probably people that travel that don't plan, and it was kind of like where you described the person showing up to work and they're getting bounced around all day. If you don't plan and you're not consistent and you're not deliberate, I think it's very easy to probably eat poorly for 3 meals a day, sleep poorly in hotel rooms. And I mean, that's going to affect your business. That's going to affect not only your health, but your business.
And I learned that lesson in Texas. The one trip, there was no hotel gym, and there was a convenience store next door, and they had pork rinds and, I don't know, chips. And I was like, we're never doing this again. So every time it's making sure you plan ahead of time.
Yeah. Being deliberate, being consistent. We can find
You know what you're doing. I think if there's anything, and this isn't about my routine, if there's something I want people to take away from this, it doesn't have to be working out. I've met a lot of people that everybody has their own form of what we call working out, whether it's going for a walk, going paddle boarding, exploring a city or going to a new restaurant. And I think it's setting that me time and that non-negotiable, whatever that might be, and being selfish in that 1 hour a day or whatever it is, will reset you. So I just think pushing for people to accept being selfish in that me time, to allow themselves to just be happier and present themselves better for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because it's not, you don't need to have a 90-minute kettlebell workout to be, successful physically. You can take a walk. You can stand on some grass barefooted. I mean, something that's going to give you a level of physical peace or mental peace. I think that's great advice. Especially,
a client texted me, he was skateboarding while walking his dog. I'm like, if that's what makes you happy, go do more. About to curse again, but go do that all day long.
No, especially in our industry, man, because it can get stressful, and you've been on projects where you're thinking about it when you're going to bed, and people can get angry and stressful, and finding a way, and this probably goes for every industry, right? But in construction is probably a second level of this, and finding a way to detach from that, and then keep yourself healthy, keep yourself happy,
Well, I think that's, and on an ending note, I'll ask you this. That's one thing that I really struggled with early on, losing sleep, worrying about getting answers out on time. Are things going to go wrong on projects? And I think remembering to be present and be human, and to take that emotion out of it. I think if you're very emotionally invested, it can really consume you. So what are some things that you do to remove yourself and to be a little bit more present?
I struggled with this hugely in my early mid-20s, right? So I installed for my father for a number of years, and then I kind of worked on and off with him through college, and I finished college, and I came on to do like estimating and project management, right? And I mean, I can specifically remember certain general contractors, like where I was standing on the job, talking to them and just being so nervous about the project. And there's probably two things I would say. Anyone listening that's going through something like that, or is worried about maybe taking a new position that would have something like that, is one, you've talked about it, is muscle memory. You go through it a few times and it gets easier. The other thing is, the project is not the end of the world. We want to do our best for ourselves, for our employer, for our business, whatever it is. But that project is not the end of the world, and things are going to go wrong on projects. I've been coaching my boys in Little League Baseball now for 4 years, and not even so much of them, but a lot of the other boys that I coach, we and my assistant coaches try so hard. I mean, we're teaching baseball and we're trying to win, and that's fun and all, but we try so hard because baseball is such a great example for life, to be okay with failure, right? Like, sometimes you are going to hit the snot out of the ball and it's going to go right into someone's glove and you're going to get out. So sometimes managing a project, estimating a project, you're going to do everything right, and something's going to go wrong, and it might be outside of your power. So you kind of just have to learn how to deal with it, and it's not the end of the world. And one last point is, at some point you got to pick up the phone. You can't let an email chain go to 47 emails because it's inhuman, and people lose touch, and that's when I feel people get the nastiest.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I think we could all learn from that.
Yeah, at some point you just got to pick it up and call, and if it's your mistake, you got to say, hey, I'm very sorry, we're working on it, but you can't just keep emailing, because I don't know, I find people get nuts doing that.
Yeah, and it gets you can't develop can't read tonality, unfortunately, on email yet. Maybe we'll get there, but you can't read between the lines.
Adrian, greatly appreciate your time, man. Congratulations again. Glazier Nation Content Creator of the Year. We all know we can find you on LinkedIn, soon to be on YouTube.
Soon to be on TikTok.
Unless it gets banned, right?
Right.
All right, man. Greatly appreciate your time. Thanks again.
A lot of fun.
Adios, man.